If you were watching, I told you I'd be at home. Well, we are on lockdown here in Tarrant County, Dallas County, Denton, Collin County, all the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But fortunately, Life Outreach International has been designated as essential services, and a lot of you probably don't know this because we don't talk about it a lot on the broadcast show. But yes, we do international missions, providing food, water to people around the world in the most desperate nations, third world countries. But we have for many, many years supported organizations here in the United States that provide food for the hungry and some other services, shelter in some cases, medical in some cases, including the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So between all that, legally, we are exempt, so I can come into the office. And I'm not around anybody here, so I feel safe to do that and blessed to be able to. I've never been so glad to come into work, to be honest with you. So here we are, and guess what? Skype still works, which means I still have guests, and today's guest is JP Pokluda. Now, if you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you may remember The Porch, which was a huge outreach to young people and grew crazy, crazy, crazy. And JP wrote a book called Welcome to Adulting. Now he is down in Waco, Texas, which I love. I have a daughter and son-in-law down there. And he has a new book that is out, even though this website says that it's expected to ship on or about April 13th. Welcoming the Future Church, How to Reach, Teach, and Engage Young Adults. They may be back-ordered on Christian books, so you might have to look somewhere else. But it is out, and the author, JP Pokluda, is with me on Skype right now. How you
Randy,
doing?
how we doing? Man,
I'm
so
doing okay.
thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's great to have you. And if people see a little jitter, you know, everybody's online these days, which is great that we're here with you and you're here with us. Chat is open, by the way, so you can ask questions. So if you see any hits, just hang with us, okay? JP, how you doing, man? What's going on with your world right now?
Man, we are reinventing how we do this 2,000-year-old tradition called the church. So it's been it has been quite the challenge. I think every day I wake up, I get out of bed, and I try to solve problems. But it's good.
No doubt. What's funny is you're talking about how to reach the future church, and it's like suddenly the church has been thrown outside its walls and has to minister in future kind of ways.
When I got the book, I started sending them to friends with VR goggles, just because it's kind of if you've seen Ready Player One, there's this scene in there where this lady goes to church by just putting on her her virtual reality goggles, and she's like there in the presence of Hillsong or whoever, and so I sent those prophetically because we didn't know we'd be here, and then all of this happened, and now we are sheltering in place.
Are you doing virtual reality church?
I'm not, but I wish we could. We should. And somebody's going to break through that first. I haven't seen it yet, but
Yeah,
we'll see.
could be you. Well, let's get into some of the book because this is a critical thing. I mean, we're losing generations, and I got kids in both of those, millennials and Gen Zs, and so I mean, it's a legitimate concern. Give us a little bit of an overview of what you're dealing with in this new book.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I worked at Watermark for 12 years and specifically cared for and ministered to this area of young adults defined by 20 to 35. And all of that was happening while Barna and Kinnerman and others, Pew Research, were doing these studies saying this is the demographic that's leaving the church in droves. And I was seeing it being the health engine of our church and growing like crazy to where it went from 100 people to 4,000 present, 18 campuses around the country, another 50 something thousand watching online. And so it seemed like the Lord was giving us grace to reach this demographic. And people started reaching out saying, hey, how are you doing it? How do you reach this demographic? What are you guys doing? What can we learn from you? And so we started writing that down, hoping that it would be transferable. Had the opportunity to speak at some conferences and to share some of those best practices. And that's where this book was born. We put all of those best practices into one single resource about how to engage the next generation. It's not just for church leaders. It could also be for someone who owns a company or a small business that is having a problem engaging with that younger demographic.
So now you're down at Harris Creek Church in the Waco area. For those of you in that area, it's technically in McGregor with a campus downtown, so you can actually go. Are you seeing the same kind of thing that you saw up here in Dallas at Watermark?
Yeah, so here in Harris Creek, there's Baylor University in Waco, and so there's a large demographic of college students. And so one of the first things we did, you mentioned the downtown campus. That's actually a campus that is predominantly young adults and college students. And we're trying to figure out, hey, how do we best care for this demographic? Because they are the engine of the church. As you think about the people with the most time and resources, you have the empty nesters, and then you have young adults that are just really have all of the freedom, and they have jobs and they're focused on their careers, but they're at church and they want to do something bigger than themselves. And so how do we call them to that? And yeah, I'm seeing a lot of the same things here in Waco.
Cool. All right, let's hit some of the problems and then we'll hit some of the solutions. So,
Sounds great.
we can go through all the stats. The younger generations that think everybody's going to go to heaven, or any path to God is just as good as any other, or God doesn't exist, or all kind of, really frankly, the classic issues that have been going on for forever, right? Some of the basic questions, but kind of what are you seeing that is problematic in these generations generally, and then we'll get into some of the answers to that.
Yeah, I think that
Oh,
fair.
start
And
again.
so you have,
I had a big
okay,
internet hit.
yeah,
Yeah, start
yeah.
over.
So I think the stereotypes are warranted, though not completely fair. And so you're hearing the most selfish, self-centered, narcissistic, lazy. These are the things that they're saying about Gen Y and Gen Z. But what I'm seeing is that they want to do something bigger than themselves. And so from leaders, they need a heroic vision. They need to be called to something. The worst thing that a leader can do right now is lower the ask. And if we look at the life of Jesus, that's not what he did. He said, somebody came and said, hey, what do I need to do? Well, sell everything you have, give it to the poor, and follow me. Oh, great. Well, let me go bury my father. No, no, no. Let the dead bury the dead. You follow me. Well, wait a minute. Where are we going to stay? Hey, the foxes have holes, birds have nests. The Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Follow me. And so the worst thing that we can do is lower that ask. I think we got to raise the ask. Say, hey, come and die. Listen, come and be bivocational. When I say die, I mean die to self, obviously. But come and be bivocational. Work with us, serve with us, be here in the church. I'm not asking you just to hold a door or to greet somebody or be an usher. I'm asking you to come and be a minister and be discipled here. And as you call them to that, I see them really respond. They're responding to that call.
Well, let me ask you this, because some of the danger in as a parent of 420 something, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard for those of us who are older, more experienced, and hopefully wiser, to trust someone that young to not make mistakes. How do
Yeah.
we approach that?
Yeah, and I think that underlying lack of trust is perpetuating the problem
Yeah.
because they've been coddled, right? And they're saying, and so the best way to find out if they can fly is to throw them out of the nest. And sometimes they're gonna hit some limbs on the way down, but eventually they'll start flapping those wings. And so, we can always be a safety net. I love the model. I do it, you watch. We do it together. You do it, I watch. Now you go do it. And so just again, a little slower. I'll do it, you watch. We do it together. You do it, I watch. Now you go do it. And I think at that you go do it phase, they're ready. And if you give them freedom and budget and responsibilities, what I've seen, I'm just speaking from the experience that I've had in this demographic, is they rise to the occasion, and they will live up to the expectations that you set on them when you set those expectations clearly.
Yeah. Personally, I don't, it's anecdotal, but with my children, I have found that if I will advise them, but still allow them to make small mistakes, they're more apt to listen when I'm advising them in the potentially big mistakes. And I think a lot of times that when we don't allow them to make some small mistakes that have very limited consequences, then we set
Yeah,
them up for a little bit of rebellion or just getting outside of our covering, and then they make some major mistakes, just generally.
Yeah, give them opportunities to fail. Give them opportunities to earn trust. To the heart of your question, like if it's trust is what they're after, say, hey, here's an opportunity for you to earn trust. I'm going to give you some responsibility and some freedom and a fence to play in here.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's good. Well, talk a little bit about the role you see, especially in the church, of the older generations, because we tend to say, okay, you're over this age, you'll go over there. You're in between these ages, you go here, and you're under whatever, so you go over there. And I get the age appropriate learning and the peers and all that. And I'm not saying it's wrong or anything, but are we missing something in not having that generational connection and oversight to what you were talking about, where I work with, I'll do it, you watch, you do it, I'll
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah, as with any organization, as you lead a church or within a church, you're always choosing your problems. And so I think you have to look at the situation and say, all right, what problems am I choosing? And there is a problem when you begin to segregate generations. And I think there is a lack of learning that happens that we need to facilitate. But I also don't think there's anything wrong with at times grouping people up by age, life stage, geography. And so as we choose our problems, we have to ask, all right, how do we want to pour into people? And there can be some wisdom when you say, okay, we're going to get all the single moms together, or we're going to get all the newly marrieds together, or we're going to get all the single people together. And so I think you have to give opportunities for both. You have to give opportunities for the multi-generations to cross-pollinate, if you will, to learn from each other. And then you have to give opportunities for young adults, Gen Y, Gen Z, to thrive amongst their peers as well and gather in their peers. Because if you don't, the world will. And so
Yeah.
there's countless opportunities at any club and at any bar and happy hours and all that fun stuff that for them to do that. And so I think within the church, we're not competing with them. We're just facilitating those kinds of conversations also.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that's good. It's funny that we send our kids off to college where they can learn from some older person.
Yeah,
It's like we're the primary older people that God's put in their lives,
that's
so
right.
we should have a good role. Let's talk about some of the core issues, the things that you're dealing with. Salvation, for instance. What are some of maybe the issues that you're working through, with the views on salvation?
Sure. I mean, I think as with any church, just you have your fairway.
Oh, he'll come back.
I saw it froze for a minute. So,
Yeah.
so with any church, you have your fairway theology, and then you have a lot of other beliefs that can creep in. And so, what I see a lot today is, people will tell me every day. I ask somebody the same question, Randy. Are you a Christian? And they say yes. And I say, well, why are you a Christian? And and the answer in that why needs to be something about Jesus and what he did. But what they typically point to is an experience they had, when they were 6 years old, or the fact that they're trying really hard, or that they go to church, or something else. And
Mm,
so I don't think we spend enough time renewing our minds around the gospel that Jesus did the work, and it's our job to trust in that, but to renew our minds around it every day, that Jesus died on the cross for our sins and God raised him from the dead. And so anything out that, if we're calling that the fairway, what I'm seeing is, you have on one side easy believism, and on the other side works-based salvation. And so that's true for any generation. Is that what you're asking?
yeah, I mean, just in general, I know that there's a survey that you did where 77% said they had to contribute, or
Yeah,
what's the balance there? Because obviously
yeah.
we have to respond to the call, right? And the Bible tells us to work out our salvation with fear and trembling. But yet the works-based thing has
Yeah.
always been a problem. You know.
So at the porch, if we had 4,000 young adults present, we know that 30 to 40% of those are not Christian, but they're there on a Tuesday night inside a church. And so
Mm.
we were asking the question, well, why are they here and what are they doing? Well, the honest answer is a lot of them thought they were Christian. You say, well, how did you find out that they weren't Christian? Well, we asked them why they thought they were Christian, and they would tell us, well, because X, Y, and Z. They point to something that they did,
Mm.
but not what they believe.
Gotcha.
And so, I like the Kennedy questions. I'm a simple guy. I like these handholds. And so there's questions between 1 and 10, 10 being certain, 1 being not so sure. If you died today, how certain are you that you would go to heaven? And I'll get a lot of 5, 6, 7. And the second question is, well, if you stood before God and he said, why should I let you in? What would you say? And a lot of times people will say, because I
Yeah.
tried, because I did, because I went to church, because I, yeah. and, and in reality, we can say a 10, that's 1 John 5:13. He says, I write these things to you, believe in the name of the Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life. So the Bible says we can know. And it's because of what, and God says, why should I let you in? We say, because you paid my way in. You gave me a ticket to this game. You purchased the
Mm-hmm.
ticket. And so I'm here with you should let me in because I got a ticket, but it's a ticket that you paid for through.
I can finish the sentence. Through a ticket you paid for through, what did you say after that?
Oh, it's a ticket you paid for through Jesus Christ. Look at Satan trying to keep Jesus out of this. Yeah. It's a ticket you paid for through your son, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, yeah. That's yeah, and that's something I think we always kind of deal with, the idea that we're trying to earn our salvation or you know do something on our own power. And what you see, what I've seen, what I experience is once you understand it's not about what I do or I have done, it's about what God has done that enables me to the doing, right?
Yeah.
So we just got to get these things in the right order.
Yes.
It's because of what He's done, and now that empowers me to do. Whereas if I try to do in order to try to earn approval or salvation or anything like that, it's like banging your head against the wall. But it's liberating to be empowered to do because we understand the order of things. Do you see that
I,
shift in kids?
Brother, I think that's the secret of avoiding burnout, is doing things by the right strength. And so, we talk a lot about burnout and exhaustion. And I look at the Apostle Paul, I'm like, that guy went from city to city, he's beat up, dragged outside a city, thought he was dead, snake bitten, shipwrecked. And so it's like, what was the secret? Well, it shows up in Colossians 1:29. I strenuously contend with all his power, with all his strength that's powerfully working itself out in me.
Mm.
And so Paul is saying, hey, the power by which I do all things is not my own, but God's power. And so it's not a bootstraps, grip the wheel, tighten your knuckles, white knuckle this. It's a surrender and release. And Lord, you work through me. You did the work for my salvation. And so you're also going to do the work for my sanctification. And so how is it that today that I can surrender? Even as I say this ministers to me because I'm realizing that I've been guilty in the midst of all of this craziness of trying to white knuckle it.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, I have to daily say, all right, Lord, what do you want to do, and how do I make myself available to you?
Yeah, I mean that's true for all of us. Let me ask you. You lean back. I can see your shirt. It says "Let's go church."
Let's go, church. Let's go, church. Let's go, church.
What is that
For,
about?
for such a time as this. Man, we're trying to rally. We're trying to be the body of Christ, the hands and the feet in the midst of sheltering in place, not being able to even give our neighbors a hug and get out there. And I really feel, as a pastor, you feel super constrained.
Yeah.
And I think everybody in the body wants to do something. There's this like holy angst, like we got to do something, but what can we do?
Well, what have you done? You got anything that's popped out at you that you've kind of gone, wow, now that was cool. That was unexpected during this time.
I mean, I'll tell you something that's kind
Oh, come on, internet.
of okay. We back?
Yep.
Okay. So the first thing that we saw was we just in any time of crisis or anything, you assess the need and you meet the need, like the Good Samaritan. So you have to assess the need.
Yeah.
So we got together and said, what is the need right now? The need that exists today won't be tomorrow. What's the biggest need right now? And as we went around, the honest answer we came to is toilet paper, which who would think at a time of crisis you'd need toilet paper, but that was a reality. And so we said, great. Well, how many rolls of toilet paper do you guys have that you can spare? And we all wrote down a number and put it in a jar, and we added those up, and then everybody went home and got their extra toilet paper. and we brought it up, and then we just started delivering it throughout the city. And so that's silly. You think, gosh, that's a
No, it's
terrible
not.
use of
Mm-mm.
resources. But here's why it's not, because in this time, it's like if we can just do anything, like that's the problem that we're solving for every day. Is like, all right, Lord, what does faithfulness and obedience look like today?
Yep.
What can I do today? And yesterday was toilet paper. Tomorrow, I think um, I think we're at the beginning of the storm, not the end of it. And who knows? Nobody can see the future, but we're trying to figure out. All right, what does it look like to not sustain the church, not keep the church alive, but how do we go out and serve the city and serve the people and be the church?
Yeah.
Because the church is never a building. The church has always been the people.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are realizing that right now. I mean,
That's
they're
right.
being forced to face that truth.
That's
Uh,
right.
so one of the deals, or a couple of the issues that you deal with in the book, and by the way, for those of you who joined late, we're talking to J.P. Pokluda, who's the author of a new book, Welcoming the Future Church. It is available now, even if some sites are back ordered, um, which is great, man. If you got a book and they're already out of stock, because I know the Postal Service is running, that just means people want to buy your book. That's good for you.
It's either good news or poor planning, Randy, and I choose to believe that it's good news, unless I'm on the phone with the publisher. And then
I'll let you follow up on that later. But so here's a couple things that you deal with in the book that I mean, if you're dealing with 20 somethings, if you're dealing with anybody, you're dealing with it, but isolation and anxiety. And when I look at those two things and I think, good gosh, right now we're told we have to isolate and the anxiety has got to be off the charts. What do you focus on when you deal with those two issues?
isolation and anxiety.
Yeah.
Uh, yes, I think anxiety. We're whatever you feed, Randy, grows, right?
Mm.
And if you feed your fears right now, they grow. And I mean, doing
He'll be
we're
back.
back,
There he is. Yep.
back. All
Yeah.
right, in 13 years of pastoral ministry, I've seen people who, they had a headache and they go on WebMD or Google and they start searching all these things. And by the time I meet with them, they're convinced they have a cancerous tumor. And the same thing will happen with the coronavirus. If you get in
Yeah.
these feedback loops where you just are reading all of the doomsday, terrible, like here's what's going to happen. I mean, your fears are going to grow larger than your faith.
Oh yeah.
But
I
but if
guarantee you, everybody watching has coughed and gone, uh-oh,
Yeah,
right?
that and you're in the grocery store and the person next to you coughs and all of the eyes go, it's like what?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and so you feed your fears, they're going to grow. You feed your faith, it grows. And now's the time, particularly if you're somewhere where you are constrained to a home, your regular rhythms are interrupted. Now's the time to create healthy rhythms of waking up, spending extended time with the Father, getting in His Word, memorizing scriptures, feasting on the Bible, feasting on God's Word. You incorporate those healthy rhythms into your life, and your faith is going to grow, and your faith will eat your fears for breakfast if you feed your faith at this time. And so the anxiety, yeah, we're seeing the highest levels of anxiety we've ever seen, Randy, the highest levels of depression, highest levels of suicide, and I feel like everybody's just kind of throwing their hands up, saying, "Oh man, what do we do? Yeah, it's just a problem." And I'm like, guys, we got to do something. We got to change something that we're doing. I mean, how can we be better at caring for the church in this time? And especially as it relates to the coronavirus, I think that's a good word. Is what you feed grows. And in the midst of isolation, you got to do a lot of this. I mean, we have to use technology. We've had it available, and we've been slow adapters as the church, and maybe as people, and maybe an older generation. But at the end of the day, like, man, we've got to use technology right now to socially interact and connect with one another.
Yeah, I think the Luddites are realizing, oops, maybe we should
Yeah.
have done a little more. Just side note, a lot of churches have been slow to adopt online giving because they felt something weird about it, or they just didn't have the capability. I get that. But the ones who have adopted it, they are thanking God right now because nobody's showing up to put anything in the bucket. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I think we need to be smart. We don't need to um, let technology replace some of the the human interactions that we can normally have, or the gathering together of believers. I think it needs to enhance it. And so,
Yeah,
yeah, I think those are good words. On the, you said faith will eat your fear for breakfast, right?
that's right.
You talk about feeding our faith. And you mentioned spending time with God, growing word. That can be, I think, a little bit for people, even those of us who say that, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. What does that look like, my faith? What exactly is it? Is that how much I just decide, it's like,
Yeah.
right, almost a
Mhm.
self-generated belief that
Yeah.
we hope is not fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about it. So I used to have a legit fear of flying,
Yeah, me
like
too.
truly paralyzing fear of flying. Like, and I would have to fly for work. And I mean, I'm talking palms are sweaty, heart's racing, just panic attacks. And
I
I'd
do
sit
know.
there on that plane and just hate life. Right. And one day I sat next to a pilot and he sensed that I was afraid and he wasn't flying the plane. He just happened to be a
Okay,
passenger.
you weren't the co-pilot.
And yeah, yeah. And and he sensed that I was afraid, and he began to talk to me through that. He goes, "What are you afraid of?" And I was like, "I'm afraid of the wing falling off." And he just started to talk through that. He said, "Hey, have you read about all those planes whose wings fell off?" And I was like, "Well, no, not really." And he goes, "Yeah, it doesn't happen." And I go, "Well, when it seems like when you're hit turbulence, like that's just kind of we're out of control." And he goes, "Man, that's when we're having fun." And I was like, "What?"
I know. Don't you hate guys like that?
You're having fun in the turbulence? He goes, yeah, because these things fly themselves. Like everything on this vehicle was made to fly,
He'll be right back, and I am so
take
with you.
controls. And he
There
goes,
you go.
by the way, those pilots, they used to be dog fighters. They used to fly in the military. They're used to going Mach speeds and shooting bad guys. And they are so far over equipped to take you from Dallas to Miami. And so you're in good hands. He goes, next time you get off this plane, he goes, I want you to look at their gray hair. I want you to look at the stripes on their sleeves. I want you to look at the badges on their shirt and know how many thousands of hours in the air that represents.
Hmm.
And so what he was doing is he was building my faith in the plane and he was building my faith in the pilot.
Hmm.
And so when I say increase your faith, what I'm talking in for such a time as this, what I'm talking about is you looking at the resume of God. Consider that he set the people free from slavery. He parted the waters, that he killed giants with tiny stones thrown from boys, that he froze the sun, allowing victory, that he's preserved life with lions and in a fire and in the belly of a whale, and he's helped the lame walk, the blind see, the mute speak, the deaf hear, like and he's brought about new life through his son Jesus Christ. His resume is flawless. And so we can trust him. And even
Hmm.
as I say those things, I hope it's building faith for our viewers and listeners,
Yeah.
that our faith is strengthening and that every single day we do that and it gets bigger and stronger.
Dude, that is so good. I appreciate you putting a little meat on those bones to make it make sense, because that is exactly it. That is hugely encouraging. I appreciate that. Rosemary in Hawaii says she enjoys watching something positive. So I know you're building the faith of at least one person out there, but I've got other
Hey,
good comments as
Rosemary.
well. And doesn't it, I mean, isn't it unfair that if we're going to be locked in quarantine, that she gets to be locked in quarantine in Hawaii? Not right. Not right.
Not right.
J.P. Pokluda, author of the new book, Welcoming the Future Church: How to Reach, Teach, and Engage Young Adults. Oh, hey, hang on. Hold that up again. I was on the website. There it is. So you've got it. The book is out. It's available. You can check it out. You need something to read, for crying out loud. Why not this? Equip you for when you can leave your house, right?
That's
Anything
right.
else you want to add, cap this thing off with before we say goodbye? And man, I really appreciate all that you do and the
Yeah.
time that you're spending with us today.
Yeah.
Go ahead and close us on out however you want.
I would just say the reason I wrote this book is because if you're not reaching the future of your church has no future. And I'm not trying to be a jerk in saying that. It's a math problem, right? Like generations die off. And if one generation doesn't pull up the other generation, then there's nothing that exists. Now I know Jesus wins, but he may not use us if we don't pass this on.
Mhm.
And everybody, maybe
Uh-oh, we froze, but we can see the
and
let's
they're
go.
disqualified. And And so right now we are passing a baton from one generation to the next, and we can't just throw our hands up and say, "Oh, they're not reachable." No, we have to figure out how to reach them. And so I wrote this book to help you. And these are proven practices. I've seen them work. I know they work. They work on different continents and different places and different contexts. And so it is transferable. And I want to see a revival and a great awakening happen. So.
Dude, I know you're seeing it where you're at, and I appreciate you being part of it and sharing it with us today on Life Today. That's it for us
Yeah,
today.
okay.
Tomorrow, I have a scientist. We're going to talk about faith and science, and boy, it's a good time to talk about that. So be sure to come back, share this interview today, wherever you're at, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, Twitter. Retweet, share, like, follow, and don't miss these great, encouraging interviews on Life Today Live.
Ah, yes, we have American gods, the gods of lust, the gods of secularism, the gods of indifference, the gods of amusement, the gods of all that are rampant throughout America tonight. And God says you'll have to make a choice.